Do you believe in ghosts? It's a simple question, right? Well, most of us might just brush it off, laugh it away, say we need hard proof before we buy into any of that. But what if you found yourself in a place where the supernatural wasn't just some late night campfire story, but an accepted, terrifying daily reality? Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack an incredibly chilling account that completely blurs the lines between myth and a terrifying reality. Our source material takes us straight to Germany's infamous Black Forest. And let me tell you, the reputation this place holds, it is genuinely terrifying. We are talking about a region so steeped in dark, supernatural lore that it literally ranks among the top 5 most haunted places in the entire world. According to the accounts we're looking at, there are these small villages and settlements scattered throughout the dense woods, but there is one undeniable, unspoken rule. After 6 or 7 p.m., absolutely no one goes outside. Not the locals, not even the tourists. They lock their doors, pull the shades, because they firmly believe things, really dark things, wander that forest at night. Section 1, Germany's Cursed Forest. So, to really understand the sheer dread of this place, our explainer follows a guy named Martin. Now, Martin was an American software engineer, the kind of guy who loved to travel every couple of months. But he purposely sought out isolated, quiet, totally empty places. So when he stumbled upon the secluded settlements of the Black Forest online, he was like, perfect, and immediately booked a trip. He ended up renting this super bare-bones room, literally just a bed and a cupboard, in a desolate, practically ruined lodge right on the very edge of this cursed forest. Section 2. Martin's naivety. Now, Martin considered himself pretty worldly. He traveled to over 10 countries, spoke a bunch of languages, the whole shebang. So the next morning, feeling totally confident and completely oblivious to the local dread, he wanders downstairs to the landlady, who runs a little bar, and just asks her for some trekking recommendations. Well, this innocent question unknowingly triggers a dire warning. The landlady immediately hesitates. She tells him, look, you're a foreigner, you're not a local, and if something happens out there, no one is coming to save you. When Martin presses her on why the forest is so dangerous, she doesn't hold back at all. She lays out what is basically a literal checklist of horrors. She warns him that up in the mountains, he might actually find the devil's own footprints etched into the stone, a sight that locals say will absolutely shatter your sanity. Then she tells him about a terrifying headless entity with the lower body of a horse. And, as if that wasn't enough, she warns of cannibalistic men who mutate into werewolves under the moonlight. She looks him dead in the eye and strictly warns him that these are not just fairy tales. People vanish here, regularly. And this quote right here perfectly captures Martin's absolute arrogance. He completely dismisses her. He basically says, look, I've traveled a world, everywhere has its spooky local legends, and I prefer to keep them strictly as fiction so they don't ruin my vacation. He essentially tells her to keep her superstitions to herself, turns his back, and stubbornly decides he's going to hike the Mimmelsee circular path anyway. Section 3. The terrifying night begins. So, stepping out of the lodge earlier, Martin actually noticed something kind of strange. The locals from the surrounding lodges were all just staring at him, like dead-eyed, intense staring. But because of his hubris, Martin just brushed it off. He misinterpreted their genuine dread as mere curiosity towards a foreigner. He just pulled out Google Maps and headed straight for the trail. Fast forward to 4 p.m., and Martin has finished about half his trek. But then he notices something incredibly unnerving. Literally, everyone else on the trail is rushing in the opposite direction. They are hauling out of the forest. By 5 p.m., he manages to stop a local to ask what's going on. The guy frantically warns him that darkness is falling in an hour, and there are things out there way, way worse than wild animals. Martin, again, just brushes it off as local superstition. He's honestly so distracted trying to get the perfect sunset lighting for his photography that he completely loses track of his surroundings. Suddenly, there's this terrifying sensory shift. Because he was so focused staring through his camera lens, Martin loses his footing and slips right down into a muddy ditch. He scrambles to climb back up, but he just can't get a grip. And then he hears it right behind him. The very distinct sound of a horse galloping left to right. He spins around, but there's absolutely nothing there. As the panic really starts to set in, this heavy, isolating rain just starts dumping down. He's completely alone in these dense, dark woods. Desperate to escape the downpour, he manages to drag himself into this dark, hidden cave, tucked away in the bushes. Section 4. Facing Death. Okay, picture this. Martin is standing just inside this pitch black cave, watching the very last rays of the sun vanish completely. It is pouring rain outside. And then he realizes he's not alone in there. From the darkness right behind him, a voice echoes, "You shouldn't have come here." I mean, take a second to let that really sink in. He turns around and can barely make out a group of men sitting deep in the cave. But then the moonlight suddenly breaks through the clouds and spills into the cavern, and these men start acting bizarrely. They're contorting, writhing, like something violently unnatural is tearing them apart from the inside. So the crucial point here is that the landlady's checklist of horrors, it's officially becoming Martin's reality. The source describes him watching these men actively mutating into werewolves right before his eyes. Utterly terrified, Martin scrambles out of the cave into the rain, just running for his life. But as he escapes into the trees, he hears those hooves again. He ducks behind a tree and watches in absolute horror as a creature charges past, a monstrous thing with the lower body of a horse and the upper body of a headless man. Literally straight out of the landlady's warning. Just as Martin is certain he's not making it out alive, he spots a flicker of light. It's an old man walking through the woods carrying a lantern. He sprints over to him, just frantically babbling about everything he saw. The old man calmly looks at him and says, "Yes, everything you saw is real, but don't worry, I'll guide you out of the forest." And he does. They make it back to the edge of the woods right near Martin's lodge. But just as Martin feels this massive wave of relief, the old man drops a chilling warning. He tells him the fear you felt in the forest is nothing compared to the danger where you are staying. He tells Martin that his lodge was historically a burning ground for witches, and their spirits never, ever left. He warns Martin to be very, very careful. Section 5. The Truth of the Folktales. Well, Martin certainly doesn't need to be told twice. He sprints back to his room, deciding right then and there he isn't staying a single second longer in this cursed place. He throws his door open, grabs his bags, and is just haphazardly shoving his belongings together. He just wants out. But then, there's a knock at his door. He freezes and asks who it is. A voice replies, "It's the landlady. Open the door." When Martin slowly opens it, he gets hit with our first massive twist. The landlady's hair is wild, and she is wearing this deeply unsettling, downright demonic smile. The source notes that Martin instantly realizes she is the witch the old man warned him about. As she steps forward, she starts chanting these guttural black magic mantras. Martin's head immediately grows intensely heavy, completely dizzy from whatever spell she's casting. Realizing he's trapped, he just throws himself right out of this first-floor window. He hits the ground hard, injured but alive, and when he looks up, the witch is just smiling down at him from the window frame. Martin somehow survives the rest of the night hiding outside, but the next morning, there is no way he's going back in there alone. He manages to gather a mob of locals to help him retrieve his luggage. When they finally kick the door in and enter the room, they uncover a terrifying stash of witchcraft tools and black magic artifacts, proving the old man was absolutely right. Badly shaken, Martin explains everything that happened to the locals and mentions he really needs to thank that old man with the lantern who saved his life and warned him about the witch. The locals just stare at him in sheer confusion, and then they drop the second heart-stopping twist of this entire ordeal. They tell Martin, that old man went missing during our parents' generation. Meaning, the only entity that helped Martin survive that deadly forest was a ghost. At that point, Martin is completely overwhelmed, absolutely sick to his stomach. He just grabs his bags and flees the Black Forest forever. Now, taking a step back, let's look at the bigger picture here. The story of Martin is terrifying on its own, but it reveals a genuinely fascinating truth about the media we all consume. Think about these massive global pop culture phenomenons we all know and love. The vampires and werewolves of Twilight, the mystical dangerous woods of Narnia, the endless witches of Hollywood movies. The source highlights that these beloved fantasy franchises didn't just pop out of thin air. They were directly birthed from the very real, very dark regional folklore of places exactly like the Black Forest. To the locals living there, these aren't just fun fairy tales or movie plots. They are serious accounts of survival. And that brings us right to our final takeaway, and a pretty deeply provocative thought. The source ends by reminding us that, not every journey is guaranteed a happy ending. We've got to always stay alert to our surroundings because the origins of our favorite monsters, they're rooted in places that actually exist on a map. So I leave you with this question. knowing the dark, historical reality that birthed your absolute favorite fairy tales. Would you ever dare to visit the Black Forest? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, keep your eyes open out there.